I'm Adriana Dorizio. I'm a PhD candidate from the University at Buffalo in the Theater and Dance Department. Our first panelists today are Sadiah Boonstra and Paul Ray. Sadiah Boonstra is an independent curator and historian based in Jakarta. Her broad cultural practice combines academic expertise with curatorial practice, public programming, and producing in the field of history and visual and performing arts in Indonesia. And Paul Ray is an associate professor of theater studies and head of the School of Culture and Communication at the University of Melbourne in Australia. He is the author of Theater Human Rights and Real Theater Essays and Experience, and he is writing a book called Performing Islands.
Thank you so much, Adriana. So today, Paul and I will co-present as we've written our paper together as well. So we will explore the aesthetics of intercultural method through new inter-Indonesian and Indo-Australian dance. In early 2020, the Asia-Pacific Triennial of Performing Arts, or Asia-TOPA, held in Melbourne, Australia, presented 3 commissioned works featuring dances from across Indonesia and from Australia. The first one is The Seen and Unseen by Jakarta-based director Camilla Andini, Balinese choreographer Ida Ayu Wayan Satyani, and several Melbourne-based collaborators. The second is Metal by Australian dance company Lucy Guerin Inc. and the heavy metal choir Ensemble Tikoro from Bandung in West Java. The third one is The Planet Element by Gara Nugroho, featuring a choir from West Timor and dancers from West Papua and Java. Presentation of a fourth show, Ibu-Ibu Belu, Bodies of Borders, choreographed by Eko Supriyanto from Solo in Central Java, and performed by dancers from East Nusa Tenggara province, which borders Timor-Leste, was cancelled following the imposition of COVID-19 travel restrictions. Created for international festival audience in Australia, Asia, and Europe, as well as for presentation in Indonesia, the relationship between what was staged and how it was created involved complex intra- and intercultural negotiations. The works each have a crosshatch relation to the Indonesian archipelago and to a sphere of cultural activity that seeks explicitly to reckon both with Australia's regional identity and with its own partial but growing Asian character. The confluence offers an opportunity for attentive and comparative analysis of intercultural performance dynamics that are easily oversimplified, either by treating artists as discrete representatives of homogeneous cultures, or by front-loading critique with a set of predetermined political material criteria that, while never absent, lie only partially within the practical and creative capacity of the artist to address. In response, we explore these performances to show how close attention to dances made across a range of proximate but culturally and economically differentiated settings can disclose a network of embodied inter-Asia relations that center specifically on the staging of method. And by this, we mean how the works have been made and how correspondingly diverse audiences are invited to watch and interpret them. Since the distinctions between them are both rich and fine, the works require close individual attention. When placed alongside each other and considered comparatively, what that attention reveals are 3 complementary ways of understanding the importance of creative method to their forms and meanings, which we characterize as process, the processual, and the processional. Over to Paul.
Thanks, Sadiah. So the process of Andini's Seen and Unseen becomes apparent when considered in relation to its 2017 source film, Sekala Niskala, and follow-up making of documentary, which is called An Offering. The stage production alone presents a self-contained, dreamlike world, combining the seen lives of a pair of twins and the unseen world of spirituality and death that surrounds them. One of the twins is sick and hovers between the 2 domains. Comparing the performance to the film helps us understand not only how this world was created on stage by conflating elements that are separate in the film, but also to appreciate how much the work is itself an act of becoming. The same child performers are in both the film and the stage show, but they have grown and changed as they have embodied this story over time. In turn, the specific content of the retrospective making of documentary opens the work out onto its collaboration between artists from Jakarta, Bali, and Melbourne, and locates the performance as itself a step in an ongoing process underway on a more broadly developmental, if not cosmological scale. If the seen and unseen reveals an outside on the inside, as it were, then metal presents the inside of its outsides. Inspired by the Bandung death metal scene, it eschews explicit references to metal as a genre, as well as to social or cultural explanations for death metal's massive popularity in Indonesia. Nevertheless, the performance reworks the intercultural and intermedial encounter between the collaborating groups, an Australian dance company and an Indonesian death metal choir, as an aesthetics of the processual. Metal is a highly formalist work, but as it proceeds, the boundaries between dance and death growl, masculine and feminine dissolve. Melbourne and Bandung, and masculine and feminine dissolve, and new ways of being together on stage are explored. This culminates in a series of whole group tableau of human torment that recall the black letter wording on death metal band t-shirts. It's as if the group has danced itself to a standstill and sung itself into silence, but it's an image full of future potential. At no point is metal reducible to the documentation of its creation, but nor can it be followed without some recognition that, among other things, is what is being shown. Lastly, the planet is best understood in processional terms, as a work whose journey begins long before it enters the stage, and which seeks to gather its audience up in its onward march towards a looming planetary horizon. Framed by 10 songs from a 15-strong choir from West Timor, the work tells a parable of post-apocalyptic survival, progressively introducing a series of emblematic characters who contest the fate of an egg, an image of future life. Watching the work as one might a Southeast Asian procession, we argue, helps us understand its episodic nature and approach to storytelling, as well as its goals to lament and celebrate by gathering diverse people in community, including its creators from Java to West Papua, as well as its international audiences. This is not without problems. Given contestations over the political status of West Papua, the negative representation of some West Papuan characters, and the framing of a Javanese dancer as planetary savior is a serious, unresolved problem. While this most certainly damages the planet's aspirations to affirm pan-Indonesian harmony, however, it's offset by another feature of the project, that those already bold aspirations are placed within a yet more expansive frame, that of the planetary. We argue that the value of the work lies, at least for now, precisely in the mismatch between aspiration and actuality. It's already difficult enough to tell the tale of the planet by singing and dancing one's way from Java to West Papua. At the same time, to tour such a tale overseas is to present international audiences with the opposite challenge: how to reconcile the planetary horizons of the show's title with the fragment of global culture it presents. Perhaps such tensions must themselves be taken as symptomatic of the work that remains to be done to apprehend the planetary, work that in any case need not and should not be considered complete only when the planet is judged to be captured in its entirety. Sadiah.
Thanks. Obviously, there is much else that could be said about each of these works, and we have sought here to model a means of reading process through performance. Then as much can be said again for finding performance in the interculturally challenging and logistically complex processes of production. Another dimension of these works' method is what their creation achieves behind the scenes, especially locally. An idea of community underpins each of the works we examine, most acutely in Eko Supriyanto's Ibu-Ibu Belu. Over the past decade, Supriyanto has spent extended periods in East Indonesian communities, creating both large-scale cultural festivals and new dance works based on local traditions. He investigates the forms and their social cultural meaning and how this cultural memory is embodied. And then he embarks on an exploration of the movement, sound, and instruments involved, and how they can be connected and transformed by his own dance vocabulary. Ibu-Ibu Belu, or Mothers of Belu, was arguably the most challenging of the works due to be shown at Asia Topa, since it is the one in which community meanings and practices are most deeply embedded, yet which does the least to explain any of those aspects to a non-local audience, even though it was created for just such an audience. This raises a challenging question that seems an apt place to bring the current inquiry to a close. Must there always be a payoff between local collaboration and international presentation? And what methods are required to get the formula or balance right? Thank you for listening.
Thank you.